Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. Today we're going to review Bulletstorm VR, a game released on all the major VR platforms January 18th, 2024 by developer Incubo. It now retails for $30 and I did buy this game. I tested it out on the Meta Quest 3 using Link Cable. Bulletstorm VR had a rough reception at launch and is currently sitting on a mixed review status on the Steam store. I personally enjoyed playing this game and I do recommend it, but I also see the flaws in this game and I understand why a lot of people did not like it. Honestly, it's not the best VR port ever made. In fact, it's kind of average as far as VR ports go. Team Beef has done a better job on some of their ports that they do for free. But perhaps the most unforgivable sin here is that Incubo deleted many scenes or shortened scenes so that the pacing is now off. So this is not really a one-to-one port of Bulletstorm. The VR interactions here are not the most immersive. VR was shoehorned into a game that really wasn't meant for VR, and you can tell because the 3D just doesn't pop in this game. The poor lighting and low resolution textures just don't really lend to a great 3D effect. Despite all those negatives though, this is still a fun experience in VR as long as you can temper your expectations and realize this is a port of an old game. So let's talk about Bulletstorm VR. It's running on the Unreal Engine 4 on my RTX 3080 with most of the graphic settings set on high. I was getting a steady 90 frames per second. I did not experience any serious issues or bugs. By default, I do think the game is too dark, so I did have to increase brightness and lower a little bit of the contrast. I do recommend increasing the resolution scale from Steam VR manually. The game does look noticeably better once you fiddle with some of the graphical settings without affecting performance. You do have full locomotion along with teleportation available. You have smooth and snap turning. You can choose degree of turn or speed of turn. You can play comfortably seated. You can do manual reloads, but there's also an auto reload option. You can also choose auto pickups, and I do recommend setting this option on because it can be annoying to have to constantly be picking up ammo. You play one of two characters, including Grayson Hunt and Trishka. I talked earlier about deleted scenes or shortened scenes, but here the Trishka levels are actually two whole brand new levels brought to VR. And Trishka actually plays differently than Grayson Hunt because she has these bladed swords that you can pull out at any time. They're used a lot for environmental kills, and it's generally overpowered because you can slice and dice through most enemies with them. You have 3 weapon slots that you can put different weapons on once you unlock them. That includes both your shoulders and one hip holster. I was not a big fan of this weapon inventory system because it is very limiting. Part of the fun of this game is trying out the different weapons and the different charge shots and seeing the wild effects they have on enemies, especially since this is not your classic boomer shooter or FPS. This is a game focused on skill shots. In other words, creative kills. You want to use your lasso, trick shots, environmental kills, whatever creative combination you can think of to create massive amounts of carnage and chaos. And this is the most fun part of the game. Unfortunately, it all doesn't work well in VR. The VR mechanics feel a little bit off. I was constantly kicking when I didn't want to because it's bound you down on the right joystick, and it's very easy to misclick when you're trying to turn. Weapon handling just doesn't feel right in VR, and it does make sense because after all, this is a port of a non-VR game. The energy leash actually does feel good in VR. In fact, I think it feels better than the non-VR game, but I think more could have been done with it to make it even more immersive in VR. Maybe with the ability to slam enemies to the ground or to toss them up in the air. Just some different combinations that you could have done with the energy leash, because the classic version of the game is just a Q button push. And I definitely think more could have been done there with the energy leash. Now this game does have 3 different difficulty levels: easy, normal, or hard. I did play this on normal difficulty, and unfortunately I do think it's a little bit too easy on normal, especially if you're doing the special skill shots or charge shots. Enemy AI here is not the best, but they'll usually get behind cover. The problem is that your energy leash is so overpowered, you can easily get them out of cover and kill them quickly. However, if you're not using charge shots or skill shots, enemies can become bullet sponges, especially on the boss enemies. My advice though is to save your charge shots for the bosses. So if you're into environmental kills and trying to find different combinations to kill as many enemies as possible, then you'll probably enjoy the gameplay here. But if that's not your jam, you probably will not like this game. Now, I did enjoy the story, the voice acting, and the music, but it is an acquired taste. It is like from the 90s, so it is old stuff. And to be honest, I think I've outgrown this type of humor. It's not as funny as it used to be, but I still enjoyed it for what it is. There were some negative reviews about some of the stuff being censored out, but I don't think that's the case anymore, really. And in either event, I don't think it really matters all that much. I honestly think it's stupid that people got upset in the first place, but now it is something in the settings where if you don't want that stuff, you can either take it out or put it back in. The gore, the R words, all that. However, I will say that I do think it's a little bit jarring that a lot of the cutscenes are just 180 screen, and you can turn on the 3D stereoscopy if you want, but you don't have to. It just kind of kills the pacing of the game when you see these floating 180 3D screens, especially if you played the original game. So in conclusion, I do think Bulletstorm VR is a fun game, especially if you can get into the skill shot challenges of the game, but the problem is it's just a mediocre VR port of an old game, and the age of the game is starting to show. The gameplay just feels a little bit off in VR, and the visuals just don't translate well to VR. The 3D here just does not pop at all, and this is just one of those games where I cannot honestly say that the VR port is better than the original game. Which would I rather play, Bulletstorm VR or Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition? That's a real question, and I really don't know the answer. I played a little bit of both recently, and I think it's a tie, honestly. And that's the problem. If I have to rate Bulletstorm VR, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. I would definitely say the original price of $40 was overpriced. It did come down in price to $30. That is a better price, and that's how much I paid. But I would definitely say you might want to wait for a sale. Keep in mind, it took me 6.5 hours to beat the game. So yeah, wait for a sale. Anyways, I'm Fast Lawyer. This has been my full review for Bulletstorm VR. If you found this video useful, if you liked it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Oh, really? Well, tell me, sister, what is?
Called them burnouts. Fully mutated. We see one?
Oh, awesome. Super duper. Color me jubilant.
We are a target in this thing.
Crash resistant. Will be bulletproof too.
I hope so. I'm picking up movement out there.
Ha! You see that?
Fortunately, I did.